where we left off. We were talking about the attributes of productive cattle, what they require. And one was easy care. And what you see here are animals in Africa that still have that herd instinct. So it's much easier to manage them because they stick together. And here we have a case of the unimproved breeds improving the improved breeds. What you see here is 2-year-old cows that have, with their calves, which is unheard of in Africa, to have so many, over 90% calving at 2 years of age, and 85% reconceiving with a second calf at 3. And that's only because we used the unimproved breed on a scientifically improved breed. Prior to that, the mortality rate was in the double-digit figures, and with these cattle here, it's down to 0.2% mortality without any treatment. So any animal that gets it just dies. It's only 0.2% that get that. Next, please. Here again, this is my son many years ago, 1995. These cattle were moved several times a day into new paddocks. And by that, moving them into a new paddock is not quite the right word. They move themselves. So all we did was reel up a wire and they moved themselves in. And every time we did that, we called the cattle by a whistle or by a call. And now the 350 cows and calves that are following him after he called them about 1.5 kilometers back down the strip, and they're all following him back into the next strip. So they've been in that strip for 3 or 4 days, and now they're going to a new strip. So they're actually moving themselves. We don't have to actually physically move them. And here the poult factor is important where you don't have to de-horn cattle. That's an important consideration in many parts of the world. Next, please. I'll talk a little bit about the breeds, in particular the African breeds we have. We saw the Mashona this afternoon, and I have no doubt that these cattle have something very positive to offer the cattle ranches in the United States, because they have attributes that you require here. And one of those attributes is the summer adaptation, heat adaptation. Next, please. African breeds have unique traits. My daughter took this photograph from Mozambique in the Zambezi River, which is about 1 mile wide. And here you have tribal people swimming cattle across the river, crocodile-infested river, from island to get to the other side. Now try doing that with our conventional cattle. It'd be impossible to do that. So it shows you the relationship between the cattle and the people. They had some difficulty getting the cattle into the water, but once they were in, they got in their canoes and they just swam them across. And what makes them very unique is particularly a high relative intake, which comes from corralling at night, pulling ox wagons and ox carts, and exposure to all the diseases and ticks and tick-borne diseases and parasites. So all the animals that have survived, what you see here, have survived those conditions. Also, you have a high degree of sexual dimorphism. In other words, very masculine bulls and very feminine cows, because of the good hormonal balance, testosterone in the bull and estrogen in the cow. Easy care, no problems with calving, mothering ability is very high, herd instinct as you saw, and obviously resistance to those diseases. Next one, please. And what we saw this afternoon was a Mashona, and here they are in Zimbabwe. It's a Mashona bull, a Mashona cow and calf. Very, very masculine bull. Extreme difference between the masculinity in the bull and the femininity in the cow. What these cattle have, as I said earlier, is all these cattle have a very high relative intake. But the Mashona also has a poult factor, which is an easy care attribute that we have to consider. Next, please. Here's another Mashona bull. And look how masculine, look at that, how thick he is by the neck and hump. That's indication of very high level of testosterone and the defined muscling. And here you can see the coat, the shiny coat of those animals as we saw this afternoon. So even though they're black, they are able to reflect, get rid of heat easy. It's not a problem, even though they're being black and absorbing more heat. But they also have been developed on high altitude tropics, so you have a high degree of ultraviolet radiation, which causes cancers and skin irritations. So that's why, probably one of the reasons why they're black and they have the dark pigment. Even the red ones have got very dark pigment around the eyes and dark hooves, which is an adaptation to those conditions. Next.
Is this bull able to grow out like that strictly on grass, or is he?
No, you can see he was on the show ring. Remember, this is very, very poor quality grazing. On your parts of your country here, it's better quality grazing that I've seen here. Absolutely no doubt there will be like it of grass.
On grass.
On grass, yes, no doubt. Next one, please. Again, just to show the coat color, coat type. It looks as though they've been brushed with an oily rag. That's it's something exuding the skin which repels ticks and flies to a certain degree. They also have the ability to, when a tick bites them, to cut off the blood supply to the tick's mouth parts. So they restrict the blood supply there, and the tick eventually falls off before it becomes mature. Next, please. This is the equivalent of the Mashona which you get in South Africa, the Nguni, but they haven't made them commercially acceptable because they select for different colors. The commercial breeders actually select for different colors, which is stupid. But they're still very good cattle, and in South Africa the most fertile breed that you will find in South Africa would be the Nguni, bull and the cow there. Next. Another example, this is a 15 or 16-year-old bull and a very feminine cow. Next, please. Here's another example, very masculine Nguni bull and a 22-month-old cow that's due to calve. So they have the ability to calve at a very young age as well. Next, please. This is a Tulu, which is also a breed that was developed in Zimbabwe, polled. And what I'd like to show you in this bull in particular is that his length-height ratio shows that he's a very early maturing bull, sexually and physiologically. But the Tulu is a better muscled animal than Mashona in general, but they don't have the hardiness of the Mashona because they're developed on better nutrition, grazing, lower altitude, mineralized soils, higher octane grass. So they don't have the nutritional adaptation of the Mashona. Next, please. This is an interesting breed that very high altitude in South Africa, areas where they get snow in winter. So of the African breeds, I think the most cold adapted is this breed here. The name is derived from a mountain range in the east coast, or the eastern part of South Africa, that's very high altitude, 2,000 meters and higher. Drakens is dragon and Berg is mountain. So they come from the Dragon Mountains. That's where they get the name from. Next, please. And this is the Afrikaner, which is not quite a Sangha breed and not quite a Zebu breed. It seems to be intermediate between the two. And they've developed on very good nutrition, very dry country. So they've adapted to withstand dry conditions, and they put on fat very quickly, easily, as you see in this bull and cow. This is a particularly good bull, but the problem with the Afrikaner breed in general is that man has been selecting them for over 100 years. So they've become a sort of improved breed with all the negative attributes of the improved breeds. But these two individual, this bull and cow, were exceptional cows. And I've got another few photographs that I got. The next one I'll show you as well. If you go into that one. Very well muscled and very, very productive feminine cow with a big rumen. Next, please. And yes, another. So they put on body condition very quickly. There's only one breed in Africa that puts on more body condition quickly and stores more fat, and that's a Brahman that comes from northern Kenya, southern Ethiopia, desert country. I'll show you photographs of them. They put on a lot of fat, body condition for long dry periods, and these are second to them. Next, please. Here's another bull and cow. You can see again the sexual dimorphism, very masculine bulls, big, heavy bulls, as opposed to much smaller cows. Next, please.
Just about all of them have the big horns like that?
They do, unfortunately. They select them for different horn shapes as well, I can believe it. Because they used them initially, many years ago, my forefathers used them for pulling ox wagons. So they had to have the horns for ox wagons, so they started breeding for these funny shaped horns. So that's an unfortunate thing, is the horns. This is an African zebu, the Angoni. The two African zebus, the Angoni and the Buran. The Angoni developed on high rainfall, very poor soils, infertile soils, low nutrition. And they're very small cattle, frame size, but they also put on body condition very quickly. Here's an example of one. There's a beautiful cow and calf. And again, a herd instinct. They always stick together like that. Next one. This is the Brahman, which was developed in desert country. 2 bulls there and this 1 bull here. They fatten very, very quickly, very easily off grass. A lot of these Hebrews here, and particularly the cows, because the bulls have got big humps, but the cows have relatively small humps, but they develop big humps when they store fat. So they store fat in the hump like a camel would store fat. And as they go through the dry season, the cow's humps become smaller.
How's the tenderness on those cows?
Well, all the other breeds, the Sangha breeds like the Mashona and the Guni and Tuli, all have very good quality meat on a par with the European breeds. In fact, some are even better. These are zebus, but I think they've done work here in the United States. If you go to, I think, a clay center, is that in Nebraska?
Right.
They've done work there, go on the internet, and they did work, carcass work and tenderness. And if I remember correctly, they came out very high in terms of tenderness and quality. Not equivalent to the Asian zebu. They're very different to the Asian zebu. Next one, please. Here's another Brahman. Very muscular, short, very, very stocky animals, and a very productive cow and calf there. And here they are, the herd instinct. You can see very clearly here. They stick together like that all the time. And this is what I'm involved with one of my friends. We combine the Angoni and Brahman to breed these cattle. So they have good attributes from both sides. The body condition from the one side and the nutritional adaptation from the other side. Next, please. The Asian zebu, this is a very good example of a very good Brahman, and it's an extremely good cow. I think she's 12 years old and she had 11 calves by that age, which is unusual. So I'm just showing you photographs of other breeds as well. And there's a lot of variation between breeds, and there's probably more variation within a breed. You know, I've spent a lot of time visiting cattle herds over the last 11 years, and I'm amazed that every herd you go into, you'll find extremely good cows. Any herd has good cows. But the challenge is that very few herds have bulls that complement those good cows. In other words, the bulls we're using bring our better cows down in terms of quality. We'll talk about that later. Next, please. A conventional composite, that's a beef master I developed before I made a composite with Mashona and Angoni and Brahman. You can see the height length ratio, and this is a Brahman, a Bonsmara developed in South Africa, very similar type of animal. They have good attributes, but what they lack, and that's why I made the composite, is disease resistance from tick-borne disease in Africa, and tick resistance and parasite resistance in particular. And that is why I combined them with the Mashona. And also what they lack is nutritional adaptation. Although these animals will really be in a smaller frame, they were still not enough adapted nutritionally as I would like to have seen them. That's why I made the composite between them. Next, please. This is a Senepal. Someone asked me about the Senepal. These are them here. They were developed from an African breed and the red pole and the Caribbean, but they have never been subjected to tick-borne disease as much as in Africa. So what I do see in South Africa, where there are a lot of Senepals are in South Africa, is they don't have the tick-borne, they don't have the resistance to ticks that our other breeds have, like your Nguni and Mashona and Tuli. They have far greater resistance to ticks and tick-borne diseases. And this is, of course, your British Angus. If you have animals that type, I mean, there's a very good animals. All you need in an environment with high temperatures, you may have to make a composite maybe with a Mashona. Maybe a quarter Mashona, 3/4 Angus, you'd have an extremely good animal. And what I find interesting is that the two complement each other. They're both black and they're both polled.
Yeah,
So
the red one's Mashoni too?
they're also Mashona, yeah. But the majority are black. Yeah. So the better animals you will find in the black color. It's not the color is better, it's just more animals black, so there's a greater variation and better quality in the black animals. So you can see here again, that bull, look at his length height ratio. Shows he's a very early maturing sexually bull, sexually maturing as you can see there, and he's a relatively small frame but very, very heavy. And I think a couple of people made a comment when we were out there to see how small frame some of those cows are, but still extremely heavy for their frame.
How do you think the heat tolerance would compare between a Mashona and a beef master?
Mashona's more. Well, the heat tolerance probably not so much difference, but the other attributes the Mashona has, the beef Masa doesn't have.
So I could cross the Mashona with a beef master and black Mashona with beef master and sell it as certified Angus beef.
You could do that. You have a very good animal, because that's basically what I did. I just used the red Mashona to breed my composite. Yes, you could do that. What you should actually have, ideally, is a Mashona cow and a beef Masa bull on. And then you produce calves that weigh 3/4 their own weight, the mother's weight. If you could do it that way around. So you'd be at a disadvantage introducing Mashona bulls onto beef Masa cows. They'll still be very good cattle, but you won't have that advantage. But I would go along with it. That's what I did. So I advise you to go, and they'll be polled as well, which is a big advantage. And remember, our polled African breeds, particularly Mashona and Angoni, they don't have a problem with the sheath prolapse. A lot of these bulls that are polled, your Angus, a lot of them prolapse. Polled Herefords, they prolapse. Mashona never prolapse. Very good. So these are the type of animals we require, whatever breed that we have. This is the type we require. So the type is, regardless of environment, is exactly the same. The differences between environments relate to climatic, nutritional, and adaptation and parasite disease resistance. Next, please. Angus cows, good body condition. Next, please. The problem here with these cattle here is that flat rump that's been selected. So I would think you'd have a greater chance of carving problems with these cattle here, with rumps like that, than you would have with the indigenous cattle from Africa that have a sloping rump and a roofy rump, because the pelvis will be smaller. Pelvic opening will be smaller. Next, please. Very good animals of Simmental and South Devon. And these are two extremely good Simmental type animals. You see, they're not massive animals, they're not these large frame animals. Very masculine bull and a very feminine cow in the same herd. And a good beef cow should look like a dairy cow. The outline of a good beef cow is exactly the same as that of a dairy cow. It should be. Next, please. Your continental breeds, like your limousine, your typical continental, the problem is body condition, as you see here. They have a lot of muscling, but they're very late physiologically maturing. They don't put on fat. So for the feedlot, they're very good. But for range felt adaptation, they're not good because they lack that body condition. But you do have exceptions. This is a continental breed. Very few animals I've seen in the United States, extremely good cattle that I've seen in herds. So a relatively small frame continental breed, very good muscling, and very extreme masculinity in the bulls and the herds I've seen, and extreme femininity in the cows. Extremely good breed of cattle. So I believe they have also a role to play in composite breeding here in the United States. That's in Wyoming or Montana. I took those photographs. Okay, I'm just going to go through quickly because I'll discuss this more tomorrow. Conventionally, there's only two breeding systems really. Conventional pure breeding, which has a place, particularly if we have pure bred breeds that have certain attributes that are very important to maintain. And then conventional crossbreeding. The problem with conventional crossbreeding is that you are very limited in how creative you can be. Crisscrossing. If you're crisscrossing Brahman and Angus in a certain environment, at one time you'll have too much Angus, and another time you'll have too much Brahman. That's a problem. Okay. The other one is terminal crossing, which does have a place, but it's a very limited niche market for terminal crosses. So you're losing out a lot on hybrid vigor and complementarity. Whereas if you crossbreeding of crossbreeds, which I'll explain, crossbred bull and crossbred cow, in one combination you can combine 4 breeds that increase hybrid vigor and complementarity. And if you close that pure breeding of crossbreeds, that's when you really make progress. When you close that foundation herd and you select from within that herd, that's when you make real progress in terms of adapting and for your particular conditions. But I'll talk about that more about that tomorrow. Carry on, please. This just shows when you combine these two breeds of Bonsmara and Anguni in South Africa, next you get animals like this. And that's what we did. We used the unimproved breed to improve the improved breed. And what you'll see here, Although it's situated in the temperate South African high veld, which is high veld means high country, warm summers, cold winters, the original composite herd suffered serious losses from tick-borne diseases. The mortality was up in the double-digit figures. By making this first cross here, we were able to calve over 90% calving at 2 years, 85% reconceiving with the second calf at 3, and only 0.2% mortality. And that's what you see here. The mother's there and the calves here. So that's that crossbreed bull onto crossbreed cow. Next one. And this is what I'm involved with in Southern Africa, breeding the composite, what I call the Veldmaster. You understand the word veld? V-E-L-D is pronounced F-E-L-T. Veld means range, but it has a wider meaning in Africa. So I had the Beefmaster, and then I combined it with the African breeds, and that's why I call them Veldmaster, so adapted to our range conditions. So I'm just showing you some photographs of these composites we developed, and it's very, very easy to develop a composite. Extremely easy. Couple of very important steps you have to follow, but it's extremely easy. You don't have to be a professor or a research station to be able to breed composites. Anyone can do it. This is the one I showed you that I bred from a Mashona composite Beefmaster. This is a Brahman Thule composite. Next, please.
Was he half and half or what?
Sorry?
The Beefmaster Mashona, what, was he half and half?
About 50-50, yeah. Here's another one. This is the composite that I bred, where I introduced, on the Mashona Beefmaster, I introduced Angoni, which is a zebu, and Brahman, which is a zebu. Now, can anyone, how much zebu blood can you see in that animal there? How much can you see? Would you say there's a lot of zebu blood or very little? Can you see big ears? Can you see a loose sheath? What would you think? High percentage zebu? Low?
I think at least half.
They are 50%, but I would never have thought that, because what happens, that hump there is just more from a muscular point of view. It's not really a hump. So what you get with the African zebu is you lose most of the zebu characteristics, like a hump and a loose skin, when you make the first crosses. So this is a composite of basically Mashona Beefmaster, Angoni, Brahman. Those 4 breeds put together. Just over 2.25-year-old bull. Extremely muscular, extremely early maturing. And that's one of my relatively small frame cows. And that cow weighed well over, she weighed about 1,100 pounds. But a small frame, but you can see how her body condition and the amount of fleshing she has in her. So we're talking about small frame but heavy cattle. Next. And this is what you have. People say you can't use crossbred bulls onto crossbred cows because the progeny will be anything. Couple of important steps. If you do that, you won't have that problem. It's mainly combining types is very important. So what I did here, I combined 2 types, early maturing Beefmaster and the Mashona. And this bull is a first cross between a Beefmaster and a Mashona. But I went about it the other way. I used, because the Mashona lacks muscling as opposed to the Beefmaster, I used Beefmaster cows that had the genes for muscling, and I went and selected very well muscled Mashona bulls and put them, inseminated my Beefmaster cows. If I used the other way around, I didn't get these results. A lot of the cattle lacked muscling. But doing the way I did it, 99% of them had very good muscling, as you see there. That's a 17-month-old bull. And here is a similar cow. And the next photograph is the resulting progeny from that bull onto that cow.
So are you saying that the muscling trait comes more through the maternal side than it does?
No. I've said that the problem with the Mashona herd in general, breed, is they lack muscling. Okay, so when I got Mashona cows and put a well-muscled Beefmaster bull onto them, the results went to my liking. Okay, because the Mashona cows, occasionally one had the genes for muscling, which they didn't show. But my Beefmaster cows all carried the genes for muscling, although they didn't show it. So I used a well-muscled Mashona bull into them. The results were very positive. In other words, 99% of the progeny were well-muscled, as opposed to the other way around. Okay, so this combination of this bull and this cow gave you the following bull. Byron, next one, please. That's the result. So it's a crossbred bull and a crossbred cow, and that's the result there. Now, no one can tell me there's variation. You can't see it. It's a composite. It's got all the attributes you require. And mainly how I did it, was able to do it, I used certain types that were similar types. Now, if I, let's say argument's sake, let's say we want to breed a composite dairy animal. You take a Holstein and a Mashona, you're not going to get the same results as a Jersey and a Mashona, because the Jersey and the Mashona are very similar types. But the Holstein is a very different type, and that's you will get much more variation in the type that you require. So complementarity is very important as well. To me, it's more important than hybrid vigor. Complementing attributes from different breeds that combine to make a better animal.
Similar types?
Yes, yeah. Similar body types. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, let's just go through quickly. I'm just showing photographs here. These are all the composites that I was involved in. That's an exceptional animal as well. Short, but he's about this wide, like that Angus bull very much. And yet he's got 75% African breeding. He's only got a quarter beef master in him. The rest is all African blood. And here's a cow I told you about earlier. Next please. Another bull of mine.
How long have you been creating this?
Just go back to the other one, please. Well, I started in 1975 with Lassiter beef master semen, and I used them on adapted African cattle. And then I eventually closed my herd. I didn't use semen anymore from outside. So I bred a beef master type that was much smaller, medium frame, and much earlier maturing. And then I put the composite Mashona, Angoni, and Brahman. I started that in 1989. And then I bred them up to 2002, and then with the political unrest in the country, I lost my land in 2002, and I lost all my cattle as well. So all those cattle are history now. But what I achieved in 40 years' time, I can do in 4 or 5 years now with what I know. So that is a positive thing. So if I can go back and be creative enough, I can breed these cattle in a very, very short period of time. Okay, what I want to show you about this bull as well is a musling. This is a composite.
Which beef cattle did you use to start with?
Sorry?
Who's beef?
Lassiter.
Lassiter?
Yeah. Yeah, I would only use either Lassiter or maybe Casey now,
Yeah.
because they are beef masters and they are beef masters.
Right.
Like what I want to show you, this is one of the composite bulls as well, is the musling. You see that musling there? And that's because of hormones and the height-length ratio. But I'll show you again when I show you size of hormonal balance. Next, please. Here's another one. So what I'm saying, composite breeding, I say the third most important, which is very important, is the breed combinations you make. It's very important, but it's not the most important, because you can use different breeds to make the same combination virtually. The second most important thing is the appropriate type within those breeds. So whether you use Mashona or beef master or whatever it is, you have to select the right type of bull or right type of cow that complement each other. And the most important is the selection that takes place afterwards. I'd look at an example of the Santa Gertrudis and the Lassiter beef master. They developed in South Texas in the 1930s. They were next door ranches. They were neighbors. And they developed into two different types of animals because of selection. King Ranch emphasized 140-day gain test in the feedlot. That's how they selected their bulls. So you can imagine what happened. All you had eventually was cattle that had a loose hide, lean meat, and big soup bones, because those are the cattle that grew fastest.
How about low fertility?
And low fertility as well, exactly, because there's no hormonal imbalance because of growth, and also you had body condition. There was no body condition. Inherent body condition was extremely poor. And I can speak from experience, because when I started in 1975, I imported semen from 3 sources in the United States. Lassiter beef master semen, BBU, which is the other organization that bred beef masters, and Santa Gertrudis from King Ranch. And I put them all on the same cows, and after a couple of years, 5 years or 6 years, I didn't have one animal left on my ranch that had either BBU blood or Santa Gertrudis blood in it. So conventional selection criteria, absolute measures, average daily gain, feed conversion efficiency, weight per day of age, result in cattle that are bred to be lean and efficient and have to be fed to be productive. We talked about that earlier. I think everyone understands that, and I'd like to explain that again tomorrow if you don't understand why that has happened. Because we've been favoring a cattle in terms of growth rate and size and feed conversion efficiency that can't put on body condition. And we require body condition for practical fertility. Okay. So, carry on, next one. So that's what happened. This is the result. I don't even have to mention the breeds there, but that's what you see. This bull here had semen exported all over the world. In fact, South Africa has imported semen from that bull. He was standing at AI station when I took that photograph of it. Now imagine it producing females from a bull like that. You can't even fatten the feedlot. How is the female progeny going to get fat enough on the range? Next one, please. And we have lean and efficient. This is another example of very poor Brahman type cattle. But what you have here, these are cattle that were stolen from white ranches 11 years ago. Because when we lost our land, it was free for all. They could steal from us. They weren't, there was no law and order, so they could steal. So what happened is, a lot of these cattle are now in the black communal hands, tribal people's hands. And they have to contend with sleeping in mud at night and being corralled at night. So you can see what condition they are now in. Previously they were well managed, better conditions, they survived and they produced. But now they can hardly survive, never mind produce. So it's a lean and efficient. Next one. And they have to be in the right environment. So the foundation for profitable ranching is inherently good body condition, as you can see in this cow and calf. This is a very good example of one of our African breeds, the Brahman, extremely good cattle. And that is determined by high relative intake, frame size, climatic adaptation, parasite disease, and appetite. And it determines nutritional adaptation. And it's a reflection of grass conversion efficiency, and it's a major determinant of practical fertility, because practical fertility is dependent on cow body condition. Okay, next. Okay, so we've talked about where we've gone wrong in terms of selection. Now, what do we have to do to select cattle that are efficient grass converters, which is the foundation of all the other traits we require? So I'm going to go through a little quickly, just to give you a background, and tomorrow, whenever I get time again, or the day after, I'll go into more detail of exactly how we do the selection. So we have to remember that, next one please. What do we want, feedlot cattle or range cattle? Here's a feedlot adapted animal, and here's a range adapted animal. Now you can imagine that bull siring females, how poor the practical fertility will be, as opposed to this bull here. Next please. So which is the most efficient grass converter? The most efficient grass converter is the animal that has grown fastest relative to its size. So it's very simple. I don't want to complicate matters. If you had a look at bulls, contemporary group of bulls, you could visually assess which bull is the most efficient grass converter by the way he's filled that package. That 8 and 5 package as opposed to 9 and 10, or whatever the package may be, as long as that package is full. The animal with the faster maturing rate, the 7 and 5 package as opposed to 8 and 10, and the animal with the best body condition and meat to bone ratio. All those attributes are positively correlated. I see it everywhere I go. You see those positive correlations. That bull that you saw in Nebraska, that Angus bull, exactly the same. Meat to bone ratio, body condition, all those attributes are positively correlated. Okay, now we have to devise selection criteria that will measure all that in one measurement. Next, please. But before we get there, which genotype results in maximum sustainable profit? Just again, optimum frame size. So very good environment, nutritional environment will allow larger cattle. But your smaller frame cattle still have the unfair advantage because you have a high maturity rate, nutritionally adapted, good body condition, meat to bone ratio, and practical fertility. And then of course, this is the foundation. On that foundation, we have to build other attributes. And one is hormonal balance. The other one is optimum milk, adaptation to climate, parasites and diseases, a large appetite, and easy care. So it's as simple as that. That's all we require in terms of productive cattle. And what we have here, I showed you the photograph earlier. This bull has been selected for a frame, high frame. He's a fertile ox, and this is a masculine, very compact bull that is generally discriminated against because they say he doesn't have potential to grow. I don't want to have a bull that at 3 years still has potential to grow. I want him to finish growing at 2 years of age. Some bulls are 10 years old and they still haven't reached their potential, so what good is that? Next one, please. Okay, the profile of genetic fertility in all herds. If we had 100 cows that that had a perfect calving record up to 10 years of age. In other words, 100 cows that had produced 9 calves up to the age of 10. Would you say they're equally fertile or not?
What's the question?
100 cows, 10 years old, and each has produced 9 calves. Are they equally fertile? Are they?
Well, they're more equally than comparing them when they're
Well,
2 years old.
what about the history? Maybe I had a 3-month calving season. What if I changed the calving season to 21 days? Would they all have a 100% calving record? If I took away the supplement, would they all have a 100% calving record? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. I could make conditions so difficult that out of those 100 cows, only 10 remained in the herd. Okay. So there's 2 differences. What you said is correct. Phenotypically, they're equally fertile. So what you see and what you measure, the fertility is equal. But genetically, they're not equally fertile. Because when you make environmental conditions so difficult that only 10% remain, that 10% is highly genetically fertile. Okay, so we have these cows now, every herd has them. Each one of you with cattle, cows, have cows in that category there, which I would categorize as 100 over 100 in terms of fertility. Okay, so these are cows that we left behind if I made conditions so difficult that the first 10% would drop out, then 20, then 30, until only the last 10% were left. Everyone understand that? But the bulls we're using aren't in that category, are they? How certain are you that the bulls you're using in your herd complement your best cows? Think about that. I think we're lucky if we have bulls that are in this category here in terms of fertility, the way we're selecting at the moment. So what that means is that if we cross that bull with that cow, we bring down the fertility to that level there. If we cross that bull with that cow, we bring the fertility level up. So what we're actually doing, the best we're doing is going for a mediocre average in terms of fertility. We need to be able to identify those cows, that 10% that can remain in the herd under the most difficult conditions without making conditions so difficult that only 10% of our cows remain in the herd. Does anyone follow that?
Say it one more time.
I'm not quite sure that everyone does follow. I'm saying if we want to make progress in terms of selection for fertility, we have to be able to identify that 10% of cows that remain in a herd where you've made conditions so difficult that only 10% have a perfect calving record.
You identify with 10%.
That is a challenge. I can do it. That is our challenge. We have to identify that 10% where we want 100% of them to have a perfect calving record. You follow?
You have to identify them without making
Exactly.
it difficult.
Yes, yes.
Why not make it difficult?
Sorry?
Why not make it difficult?
You only have 10% cows left. How are you going to make money?
Well, just blow off on the feed.
Sorry?
Just slow down on your inputs.
But you only have 10% cows left.
Well, you know which ones are the good ones.
How are you going to make money with 10% cows?
You'll have to start over.
Why not do a scoring system and give each one the calves in that first 21-day period a point?
We're going to come into
a
that.
half point for the next 21 days.
Well, that's not quite right, but you have the right.
You keep these records over a period of time to determine your best ones without
Yeah,
sacrificing.
you have the right idea, but it's not quite right what you're saying, because the 21 days is by chance.
Well, you figure when you have your first calf, you put the bull in.
Mhm.
When you have your first calf, that every cow that calves in that 21-day period, give her a full point.
Okay.
And then after that, give them in the next 21-day period, give them a half a point.
Okay. So
Down to a quarter and no points if she doesn't calve.
when are your cows calving?
Say again.
When are your cows calving?
Oh, that's true. You have to-
No, I'm asking you, when are they calving?
When are they calving? Depending on when you put the bull in.
No, but when are they calving? When's your calving season?
Oh, ours in wintertime.
Okay. I'll come back to that later. So what you have there is environmental factors that you can't.
Well, we do it just because that's the way everybody's always done it. In our
Well, if I can give you good advice,
we take it.
if you do everything opposite of what everyone says, you'll be 100% right.
We're finding that out. We're finding that out for sure.
Okay, now you're right. We have to score them. You understand what I'm saying? I want to be able to score that 10%, that one, in terms of the fertility, genetic fertility, without making conditions so difficult that only 10% survive.
Because you can't afford to kill
You
your
can't know.
cows.
You can't know.
You'd be out of business.
Exactly. And if you're increasing your stocking rates, you would need your own cows to build up numbers.
Well, I mean, my thought is you start limiting your inputs, and the cows that fall out of that program, you just remarket those to somebody else who's willing to put those inputs into a cow.
Okay, but why is it not better to identify that 10% that would remain without doing that?
Well, then what are you going to do with those remaining genetics once you figure
You
out
keep
that?
them. Well, what do you keep them? They're producing for you. Now you select your bulls out of this group of cows here, not out of those cows here. Once you've identified your most fertile cows, that's where your bull selection comes from.
So just let them live their life out, but if you change your management strategy, aren't they going to fall out anyhow? If you change your management
No, what I'm saying is, I'm going to the extreme. What I'm saying is, you could make nutrition so good that 100% of your cows calve every single year, but you can still identify that 10%.
So how you gonna do it?
I'll tell you tomorrow. I'll go through it quickly, but I'll explain it tomorrow. It's very, very simple. It's so simple. You know, it's difficult to understand that we've overlooked, and I'm including myself, overlooked this for so many years. Because we've never seen the whole picture. We just looked at detail, and we've never seen the whole picture. It's very, very simple. I'll give you an idea just now. Can we go to the next one? So man and nature, complex or simple? Nature is extremely complex. We will never be able to understand nature. It's so complex. But if our approach is different and we stand back and we look at the bigger picture and we allow nature to do the selection for us and we read nature correctly, we will be 100% correct. Rather than trying to look at detail as we're doing with EPDs and trying to put that detail together again. That's impossible. No man can do that. If you look at EPDs in terms of growth rate or weaning weight, what is too fast, too slow, too much, too little, too long, too short? We can't do that. But if we allow nature to do the selection for us, nature will tell us which is the most efficient animal or most fertile animal. We just have to be able to read correctly. So that is what I'm going to talk about, how we are able to read nature correctly. So we allow nature to do the selection for us. And all we have to do now, read nature correctly and accelerate that process of natural selection. That's the only role we have as breeders. So read nature correctly and accelerate the process of natural selection. If we don't do that, we're going to run into all sorts of problems as we've done in the last 100 years, and we will continue doing until we change our attitude towards nature. Okay, the next one. Okay, according to nature, which animal will give maximum profit per hectare? A high potential animal or an animal naturally tuned to its environment? This animal genetically has got a far lower growth rate and milk production and size than these animals here. But if the environment doesn't allow it, what worth are those animals there? Absolutely nothing. So we have to tune the genetic program, the animal's genotype, to be in tune with our environment. And then we will get maximum profit, maximum sustainable profit per hectare with a minimum of inputs. Here you need extremely high inputs. Next one, please. Okay, reading nature correctly. Naturally tuned to the environment, artificially tuned genotype. That is artificially tuned to the extent that it won't even fatten in the feedlot. How is that progeny going to fatten on grass? Next one. Okay, well, what do you want? Survival of the fittest or survival of the prettiest? At the moment we have survival of the prettiest. We require survival of the fittest. Next, please. Inherent body condition we talked about, one of the attributes we require, that's the foundation of everything. Very simple, 12-month maturity. Now remember what we said, the animal that is the most efficient converter of grass is the one that, relative to its size, is growing the fastest. So just by looking at the animal, we can see this one, obviously, has grown faster relative to its size as opposed to this one here. But we need very objective criteria, measurements that we can take to be able to differentiate between a large spectrum of animals. Very simple. Okay, so what I've done is, remember the frame scoring when they started scoring for high frames? Missouri University have got all those frame scores. You can find them on the internet. A certain frame score will relate to a certain hip height at a certain age. So you can predict the frame size. To that frame size, you're going to put a kilogram weight or a pound weight. So what I do at 12 months, I measure hip height of the bulls, and from that I predict the mature size at 12 months. So at 12 months I know what size they're going to be. I weigh them at 12 months by using a scale. And that weight in relation to the mature size gives you the maturity. And the animal with the highest maturity is the one that has filled that package the most. And it's the most efficient grass converter. That's why it's got the highest maturity rate. In other words, it's grown fastest relative to its size. I'll explain later how we do that, but you understand the principle of that. So we predict mature size at 12 months, we weigh them at 12 months, and it's not necessarily the heaviest bull or the lightest bull that will be the most mature, but it's invariably will be in the smaller frame category. But relative to their size, they will be very heavy. So we're not selecting for lightweight animals, we're selecting for very heavy animals, regardless of frame size.
Are you just some linear measurement too, or not?
Just no, I don't. Well, just one measurement. You don't have to have all this other stuff. Just one measurement. Hip height predicts mature size, and then you weigh them at 12 months and you work out the ratio. All this other is not necessary. It's complicating matters. You want to keep things simple. So this measurement here will reflect in what you see in terms of, and I've seen it many times. The animal you can see with the fullest package will have the highest maturity rate at 12 months. So that's extremely important, particularly with bulls. Next one. Okay, optimum weight, milk production, the same thing. Weaning cow to calf ratio is not a good idea because you might inflate the calf to cow ratio by having a cow that's poor body condition, so she'll be lighter when you weigh her, and the calf might come from a very big bull. Okay, so what we require is more or less 50% of mature size at weaning. So at 8 months, 6 months, we do exactly the same, predict mature size, and measure that weaning weight relative to mature size, and that'll give you the cow efficiency.
Say it again.
At 6 to 8 months, you measure hip height, predict the mature size, and weigh that ratio out as well. Work it out for weaning weight. So you comparing the calf to its own mature size in terms of its growth rate, and that will reflect more on cow efficiency, the mother's milking ability and mothering ability. I'll go into more detail tomorrow, so I just want to go through it quickly. Fertility. Bull fertility we'll come to a little bit later. Cow fertility, we were talking about, Byron, you said we need to score them. We do. I can rank them. What we do is, I'll explain to you later tomorrow, depending on when the cow calves, she's either disadvantaged or advantaged in terms of the time from calving to first cycle. Okay, and the time from calving to first cycle will determine the intercalving period. ICP is intercalving period between two calvings. So if you've got those figures, and we know when the cow calved, we can work out a corrected intercalving period, and then each individual, you do it for every year for each group of cattle. So you'll have an average line that you can draw, and then you take each individual cow, when she calved, what the average intercalving period was relative to her own, and where she is above or below the line in terms of fertility. So you give a fertility index. It's extremely effective and extremely accurate. Does someone want to ask a question? Okay, we talk about scrotal circumference per 100 kilogram mature size. That's also a measurement. One can use that as bull measurement, but there's a far better way of selecting your bulls. Next one. Meat to bone ratio, you can see by eye. You don't have to have a computer to be able to do that. Meat to bone ratio is extremely important, but it will be correlated to 12-month maturity. Just think about it. 12-month maturity, you won't get a bull that's just skin and bone. You'll be well muscled and you'll be good body conditions. So it's all correlated. And what you have here, if you have a 5% higher dressing percentage at slaughter, that's a very big difference in carcass value. 5% in terms of US dollars now, what would that be? What's the average carcass weight? What's the average carcass weight? what is the average carcass weight?
Oh, pounds, 650?
Okay, 5% onto that, times the dollars, what value would that be?
75?
About $45.
5% on 600 would be 30? 30 pounds, what's the value per dollar?
I just sold some for 250.
It's more like 60, 70.
Between about $70, $75. It's a big difference. Same weight animal, live weight. Same live weight. So this is very important, this meat to bone ratio. Particularly for the guy who buys the cattle and slaughters them.
It's naturally going to be higher in the early maturing.
Sorry?
It'll naturally be higher meat to bone with the early maturing.
Yes, it will be. Yes, yeah. Next one. An easy care, we need low input cattle. Cattle that don't have to be pampered, that can survive and produce off grass. Next one. Another one. Easy care, easy calving as opposed to that cow there with a very straight rump. Next, please. A balance is required. Let nature decide, not man. If we have to decide what's good, what's desirable, what's undesirable, that's where we go wrong. Let nature, we have attributes to require, and we allow nature to do the selection for us. We just have to read it correctly. Next one, please. The best that man can do is accelerate the process of natural selection. So if we identify the right animals, we just have to accelerate that process by various means, AI being one of them. Next. And that's why I still live in Zimbabwe. People ask me why you still live in that country. That's one of the reasons. That's a view from our home. We live in the town there. Okay, that's enough for today, I think. Oh, that's at Albrook. In the winter in Montana. Off grass, no feed.
So it's the same diet. Very heavy, very short, early material. Those are the types of animals that will give us the highest sustainable profits per acre. Of course, they are not adapted material, so we have to use some adapted material to create the composite. Mashona, not as good meat to bone ratio as the others, but it provides the resistance to heat and the adaptation. So by combining, you can do what he's talking. That's mostly what I wanted to show.